Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We got how the U.S. kept Europe's army small on purpose. Woo! And this is from a channel titled EU Made Simple. So, with that being said, we're smoking all my dragons, divine, righteous, almighty, greats, overachieving, never slacking. And we're going to fly back over to Europe. Original link in the description. Let's jump straight to it. Here we go.
I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. That's what Pete Hegseth called Europe in a now leaked message to Trump's top team. And he's not alone. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's never been Europe's biggest fan, chimed in. I hate the idea of bailing out Europe again. And their boss? Well, here's President Trump himself.
Yeah, I think they've been freeloading. The European Union's been absolutely terrible to us on trade, terrible. And as you know, NATO, I got them to pay hundreds of billions of dollars. They were way behind.
But let's be clear, this isn't just a Republican thing. Even President Obama once called out Europe for not pulling its weight on military spending. So, are they right? Is Europe really freeloading of American power? Well, the short answer is yes. But it comes with a massive caveat. It's by design. Not European design, but US design. But before we break that controversial statement down, let's look at the numbers.
I gotta be honest, the way this started, I did not expect. When you see Trump, it's a very, very, very rare nowadays for you to hear Trump say something and then and then Biden said it too. Agree? So they both said it. They both were, even though I have heard people call out different things that they'll say, okay, well, he's did deportation, for example, and then it's just back and forth madness between Democrats and Republicans. But on this video, even just starting out, I wasn't expecting that. And then I wasn't even expecting him to go, is it true? Yes. So let me just say, he automatically just pulls you in. I'm interested. Let's rock and roll. He got my attention.
Numbers first. The US is a military behemoth. In 2024, the United States alone covered nearly half of NATO's total defense budget. That's about $968 billion. Let me repeat that. One country, the USA, pays more than all the other NATO countries combined. Even though most NATO members ramped up spending following the invasion of Ukraine, the gap still remains huge. Back in 2021, before the war in Ukraine, this gap was even larger, with the US accounting for around 70% of NATO spending. Meanwhile, back then most European countries were falling short of NATO's 2% of GDP spending target. And then there's boots on the ground. Around 100,000 US troops are stationed across Europe, mostly in Germany, but also in Italy, the UK, Poland, and Spain. And these aren't just symbolic. In a crisis, they're the front line, and they'd be backed up by another 200,000 troops ready to fight in a moment's notice. Many of them armored divisions designed specifically for Eastern Europe. Oh, and let's not forget about the nuclear bombs. Experts estimate that the US has about 100 tactical nuclear bombs stored across Europe, in Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, in Italy, and Turkey. So yeah, based on the numbers, it really does look like Europe is getting a free ride, while the US is doing all the heavy lifting.
This is the aircraft carrier shelter you seized.
I don't know, nothing come for free, that's for sure. That is for sure.
But it's very easy to paint Europe as lazy and cheap. And here's our argument. This setup isn't just tolerated by the US, it's engineered by it. Think about it. If Europe had a fully autonomous military, it could act independently. That could mean acting without American approval. And that is something Washington hasn't been a fan of in the past.
So pretty much, it's like, we're gonna little brother you, and we'll look out for you as long as we got control. We don't want you to be, up there with the big bro, because we might bump heads, but one day, so we gotta have full control. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it's sounding like.
Let's look at some of our history. After World War II, America didn't just rebuild Europe's economies, it locked in its role as military protector. And when Europe tried to flex its muscles independently, America kind of shut it down. One prime example is the 1956 Suez Crisis. When Egypt nationalized the Suez Canal, Britain, France, and Israel invaded. But instead of backing its allies, the US joined the Soviet Union in forcing them to back down. The result? A humiliated UK and a very clear message. You don't act without Uncle Sam. Then there's France though. Under President Charles de Gaulle, France tried to break away from the US. And he somewhat succeeded. In 1966, France withdrew from NATO's integrated military command and even expelled US military bases and troops from French territory. Did it last? It did, for a while. But in 2009, France came back into the fold. Today it's the only Western European power without a permanent American base. But even France remains tightly integrated with US-led NATO structures. After the Cold War, the European Union wasn't just about trade anymore. It started talking defense. In 1998, at the St. Malo summit, the UK and France agreed. Europe needs military capability independent of the US. Washington, obviously, was not thrilled. US Secretary of State Madeleine Albright.
Hold on, y'all. Hold on. No, the U.S. Oh man, the U.S. is like the big bully, bro. I'm not even gonna lie. We the big bullies. We the big bullies. You know. I'm not even gonna say we, cause how can I say I don't listen. I ain't doing with them government. I'm not. No, I can't. I'm not. Nope. I can't tie myself to. Because at the end of the day, us regular folk don't control what the government does. We do need to definitely continue to stand up for something that's wrong though. And I just feel like people be so blinded, so molded to either obey and just go with the flow, or just so patriotic they're like, yeah, who cares? We're the best. We're the conquerors. This is US. You either get with it or you don't. So you either kind of fall between that two. The people that are just like, wah, wah, wah. I'm going with whatever. I just got to pay my bills. And then the others that are kind of like, just super patriotic, So, yeah, that's really where it's at out here.
Bright laid down the 3Ds. No duplication of NATO, no discrimination against non-EU NATO members, and most importantly, no decoupling from the US. But Europe pressed ahead anyway. In 1999, the EU launched the European Security and Defense Policy and set a very ambitious goal to build a 60,000-strong rapid deployment force, ready to act within 60 days and sustain operations for up to a year. The American pushback, though, was immediate and fierce. By 2000, the US Defense Secretary William Cohen warned that there would be no EU caucus within NATO, and went as far as suggesting that if the EU moved forward with its plans, NATO could become a relic of the past. The message was super clear. The US wasn't just skeptical of EU defense and autonomy, it feared it. A strong, independent European military could reduce NATO's relevance, and by extension, diminish America's influence in Europe. And in a world where the US faced no serious rivals, even the possibility of a rising European challenger was treated like a national security threat.
Damn. Yeah, not gonna lie, that's definitely the big bully right there. That's that person that comes to you and gives you something, gives you a gift, but it's really to control you. It's like, okay, I gave you a gift. I'm gonna look out for you, but you got to do what I say now. You got to be under me. That's what that is. That's exactly what that is. U.S. I'm not surprised. Oh man, United States.
However, caught between American pressure and internal divisions, which is super typical in Europe, the EU's vision for its own rapid reaction force quietly fizzled out. So, let's recap. Europe can't act alone. Check. Europe can't build its own defense structure. Check. What's next? Well, what about making sure European armies can't fight independently? Enter the next phase, military specialization. NATO, led by the US, has encouraged member states, everyone except America of course, to specialize their forces. That means, instead of every country having a full self-sufficient military, they each focus on just a few roles. Now on paper, that sounds practical. Budget cuts, efficiency, interoperability. But here's the thing. When you specialize your military, you lose the ability to act alone. You become reliant on allies to fill in the gaps. And ultimately, That means relying on the United States. The US provides critical military enablers, the behind-the-scenes capabilities that makes modern warfare possible. These include aerial refueling tankers, without which European jets have very limited range. Strategic airlift, the giant C-17 and C-5 aircraft that can move troops and heavy equipment across continents in hours. And satellite renaissance and GPS, mostly controlled by the US military.
So this is why so many people don't like this is one of the reasons why people control. Simple. Control. It's just like what I remember reacting to a video that was talking about how like European film was like pretty much blackballed in Hollywood. Like they had to go through pretty much these different requirements to even be able to be on film at a certain amount of time. And one of those requirements was, or to be in Hollywood. And one of those requirements I think was like you weren't allowed to like show white people as slaves or so. It was I gotta find. I mean, I have so many videos. It would actually be hard to find, but yeah, it was interesting to see that there's just so much that we don't know, that the everyday people don't know, and it really refuses to educate themselves. Why? Because it's America. We're the greatest of the greatest, right? So why would we need to educate ourselves on the flaws? That's a lot of the mindset. But there's a lot of good people who they know what's up. I mean, but yeah, it's war. It's war tactic. We got to make sure that no matter what, we are we're the top dog. Literally Game of Thrones. It's like US is like we're sitting on this chair and this game the throne. We're sitting on a throne and we're watching everybody. We'll help you. We'll help you as long as y'all don't get bigger than us. And that's pretty much how most empires have been throughout history. So, I mean, the question would be, what do we want? To my fellow Americans who may watch this, the question would be, what do we want other countries to be as powerful as the U.S.? Personally, me, if that meant no war, cool, right? If it on a peaceful tip, but if there was a possibility that we could bump heads and they could defeat us, see, that's when the war strategy it's just, man, it's...
And of course, there's much, much more. Without these enablers, even well-trained European armies are blind, slow, and limited in reach. Now, let's look back at the timeline. NATO specialization really took shape starting in 2002, with the Prague summit marking the first major push. Things accelerated further with the Smart Defense Initiative in 2011. And that brings us to our third lesson. Europe developing away from a self-sufficient military, partly thanks to US influence. A very convenient outcome if you're trying to stay in control.
Do you want to know where to invest $1,000 right?
Man, it's like they're talking about AI right now, but it's like the problem with this is, when you've been the top dog so long, and when you fall, it's a lot of people that are gonna want to get their hits in. When that big dog finally gets beat up, it's a lot of people that's gonna want to get them kicks in, and yeah, they're gonna remember how they were treated and how much they were controlled, and that bitterness and that anger is gonna build up. What they say, fear turns to anger, and anger turns to hate. So it makes sense why so many people really, 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 really dislike the U.S. right now, because the U.S. has been on top for so long, but at the same time, it has been on the decline. Then you got Trump here, and Trump, listen, we're coming back. That strikes fear in a lot of people, because it's like, hold on, we already feel like we were oppressed by being just controlled and not being able to be as great as we could be. So now Trump, if you're saying America is going to be the most feared and, that we're going to be back, and oh man, yeah, that strikes a lot of fear. Oh, let me take this off of mute.
US influence. A very convenient outcome if you're trying to stay in control. Now, up to this point, we focus how the US has blocked Europe from becoming militarily independent. But then, why do US presidents keep demanding Europe spends more? Obama pushed for a minimum of 2% of GDP, and Trump went further, suggesting even 5% of GDP. Doesn't that mean the US actually wants a stronger Europe? Well, we think not necessarily. You see, it might all be about profit, not for Europe, but the US. Let's talk numbers. This bar chart shows how much a selected group of European NATO countries has spent on US military equipment over the past 4 years. The Netherlands tops the list, with a staggering 97% of its purchases coming from the US, while France lags behind at just 6%. On average, European NATO countries source 64% of their military gear from the US. That's billions flowing straight to American defense giants like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. Now imagine if every European country doubled its defense budget, as some are doing now. That's not just rearmament, that's a massive windfall for the US defense industry. And we've already seen this play out. The EU recently proposed 150 billion euros in military loans, but with a massive catch. The money should go to European defense manufacturers. And the US reaction? You guessed it, extremely unhappy. Marco Rubio gave Europe a stark warning. Do not exclude US companies from our defense market. Anyway, let's jump back to our timeline. In 2014, President Obama began gently nudging Europe to step up its defense efforts. That pressure didn't stop. It only grew, especially with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that brings us to our fourth lesson. One could argue that the US isn't really that interested in helping Europe become stronger. It's more focused on channeling European money into its very own military-industrial complex. And also, let's not forget.
I know I said this earlier, but guys, this honestly really is Game of Thrones. Like, it is. It's just in a different time. I can only imagine the nasty things that goes on in the background that us average people would never know about. Like, seriously, in order for people to just continue to roll and stay in power the way they do.
Buying US equipment doesn't just mean firepower. It means reliance on American parts, training, logistics, and political goodwill. Now, onto the million-euro question. Why would the US really want a weak Europe?
Yes,
and
why?
Here's what I think. A strong, unified, and militarily independent Europe could one day become a global power in its own right. And Washington simply doesn't want partners. It wants followers. Think about it. What's
Stop that right there. Doesn't want partners. It wants followers. Game of Thrones.
And militarily independent Europe could one day become a global power in its own right. And Washington simply doesn't want partners. It wants followers. Think about it. What's easier for the US to influence, control, and profit from? A united European bloc? 27 countries with a common foreign policy, a shared defense structure, and maybe one day even a joint army? Or 27 fragmented nations, each spending 5% of their GDP on US-made weapons, but not coordinating with each other? You really don't have to guess where the Trump administration stands on this. Their American first rhetoric makes it pretty obvious. They prefer a divided Europe. And this is likely one of the reasons why Trump and his allies have shown open support for far-right nationalist parties across the continent, like AfD in Germany, Fidesz in Hungary, or Le Pen's National Rally in France. Because weakening the European Union works in America's favor. A fractured EU is easier to pressure, easier to dominate, and much, much easier to outcompete. Just look at the trade tensions now between the US and the EU. It's a lot easier to pick off individual countries one by one than to take on the European Union as a whole. But let me be clear, this does not mean that Europe should cut ties with the US. Not at all. The transatlantic alliance matters, but that alliance should be based on mutual respect, and Europe should be a partner, not a pawn. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think in the comments. If you find this topic interesting, check out our video here on how a European army could work. We look at the command structure, recruiting, and who would actually lead it. And to support us further, consider joining us on Patreon and vote on video ideas every week. And thank you to our presidents, Jan Schauke, Christian Peter, AJVD, BJ Unite Europe, Stefan, and Mr. Probot.
So he said Europe should be a partner, not a pawn. But ain't that what they was pretty much been trying to do? I mean, the U.S. ain't going for it. This is about conquering, being in control, and about being a big dog, the boss, dominating everybody and everything around you. That's what this is about. So, y'all let me know how y'all think this is going to turn out in the comments when it's all said and done. And if you enjoy this reaction, definitely don't hesitate to hit that like, subscribe with that notification bell, and I'll be back with more soon. Much love.